Now, let's meet the experts. Aaron, Tim?
Thank you, Charlene.
Thanks, Charlene.
I've had the privilege of being able to travel out of the country with Robert Mann a couple of times. And he was crazy enough to go with us to Iran 4 years ago, almost to the month. And I know that you've had a past of traveling throughout the Middle East. Is that what gave you your interest in Oriental rugs?
It is actually, yeah. It was inadvertent. I traveled in the Middle East just for fun. And honestly, I saw a lot of Oriental rugs and I thought to myself at the time, I was 19 years old, I thought, this is way too complicated. I will never understand it. Slowly but surely, I got it beat into me though.
So you started like everybody else, knowing nothing.
Well, we all start knowing nothing, but I knew less than nothing about Oriental rugs. Let me put it to you that way. You know, my mother referred to them as those things that little old ladies like. She liked mid-century modern before her time, and we didn't even have them in our house. I never literally paid any attention to one until I began traveling.
Okay. Well, what got you started? Where did you begin in the process?
In the rug business, a guy I traveled with, who I met subsequently back in the United States, wanted to learn to be a rug dealer. And he figured out that a way to learn about rugs, to become a dealer of antique rugs, was to learn to be a restorer. He met a Persian guy. He worked for him for about a year learning to fix rugs. And he wrote me a letter one day. I was driving a truck in Connecticut. This is in 1978. And he said, "You have good manual skills. You might like this work." So I stopped in and visited and was offered a job and took that job, and that's how I began. I was an apprentice to an Iranian guy in Denver in 1978.
And really, what's allowed your business to grow over the years since you were a little over 19?
A lot of stubborn, sort of hard work, you know. In the beginning, I had no conception of what would happen. I mean, I worked as a repairman. We occasionally rugs would come in, they'd be dirty, and we would think, well, what are we going to do? So we'd soak them in the bathtub. That's what my Persian friend taught me to do. And then subsequently, we'd wash them in the driveway. I went to the local wash plant here in Denver, and I said, it was $1 a square foot at the time to clean rugs. I said, would you give me some kind of break on that price? And he threw me out of the place. And I, well, you know, an old Armenian guy. That was the name of the game. And I thought, well, I'll go home and I'll try to figure that out. And it was about 7, 8 years later, maybe, that I realized I was actually washing a lot more rugs than I was fixing in terms of dollar gross. Mm-hmm. And I just sort of woke up one day and realized I was a rug washer and also still a repairman. I sew every day still, but well, we built a washing business.
I don't think I knew you back in the bathtub days. Well, I mean, I think you do have a bathtub today, but it's a stainless steel one.
Right.
But I think this was one of the first times I visited your place, and very modest.
Oh, primitive is the word. And actually, that was a big improvement over the two that came before. So true confessions here.
You had running water in this facility.
Yeah, this is about 1993 or so, something like that. And we were using a passive drying room, just a bunch of poles in the back end of the room. It's about a 2,000 square foot room. It's a big building. It was a 9,000 square foot building. But we had about a 2,000 square foot washroom, and we're just stumbling around in the dark trying to figure it out.
No ringer?
We didn't have anything. I didn't buy a ringer until about 25 years ago. And this was about 93 that you're looking at here. So some years later.
Well, let's fast forward a little bit and take a look at your wash floor today.
Yeah, as you can see, we went a little crazy here. It's a long story. I mean, I've worked hard to build a business and to expand it and to really capitalize on all of the different benefits. Investing in equipment, investing in real estate, because the dirty secret is in the end, that's the only way anybody ever makes any money in the rug washing business is in real estate. And so utilizing a lot of industry experts from other industries, water processing, machine guys, we put together a pretty state-of-the-art mechanized plant, which you see in that photo there.
Robert, in 1982 is where we talked last week. You kind of got your start with your first location.
Yeah, I opened the first actual building I rented to work at. It was January 1982. I worked on my living room floor and in the driveway prior to that, about 5 years worth. and moved out of that. That was a 2,000 square foot space, built a tiny little wash pit with a little wall around it and a couple poles at the back end. Moved out of there, negotiated a lease where the guy said to me, times are hard in Denver then. He said, well, if you really want to break this lease, I'll let you break it at any point with a small penalty. So we managed to break the lease 2.5 years later and moved to a 9,000 square foot building. Stayed there for 24 years and then kept moving to bigger and bigger buildings. Our current building is 24,000 square feet. It's a very luxurious facility.
And you've been in that building for how long now?
This one, about 2.5 years now. Well, we bought the building about 4 or 5 years ago. It's a complicated story. I won't get into it too far. We were in the last building I was ever going to buy, the one prior, about a 15,000 square foot space, acre and a half of land. City and County of Denver decided it would be a great parking lot for the stock show, and bought us out. And so we were forced to move to this new building. And in the process of moving, we sort of redesigned everything from the ground up and went kind of crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of nice. You start out, washing rugs on the floor or in a bathtub. And as you progressed and developed, put together businesses and new buildings to the one that you ultimately, your dream shop. But, I guess volume dictates, all the necessities for modernizing. But, for everybody that's listening in, you can start, a rug business out of your home or out of a small shop.
Oh, of course I did, as a matter of fact, and people still do. I think a critical point to be remembered here, everybody thinks it's just volume that dictates the investment in equipment, but it's actually payroll. Machines are cheaper and more reliable than people. And I don't mean that in a pejorative or bad way. The fact is, you can have 3-4 guys running some equipment that makes their life 10 times easier, allows you to pay them a lot more money, and does just as good or actually a better job in the end, as long as you're really controlling everything. I mean, we're not talking about being dumb with the machines. You got to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in the very long run, most of the equipment I've bought, a lot of the stuff built by Centrum and custom equipment, I've bought and sold a lot of my equipment over the years, and I've hardly ever sold it for any less than I paid for it, because the value and the price of the gear goes up so fast. Mm-hmm. So when you look at it that way and you amortize it out, and some of our wash guys have worked for us for 10, 15 years, and they do this all day long, every day, and that equipment makes their life possible. 15 years as a manual rug washer was a tough job. So it's worked in a lot of different ways. It's not just about big volume. Although, of course, if you're sitting down to do the math, volumes are critical. Volume and population base those are the start points of determining what you can build in a particular area.
Well, we'll continue on with a tour of your current facility. This is obviously the dry room.
That's the dry room, yeah.
And cash and carry area, I'm assuming?
Yeah, it's a sort of a gallery space. It's about a 900 square foot room that's designed. We buy and sell antique rugs, and it allows us to hang nice things up on the wall as well. We're involved in a lot of different ends of the business. We have a second floor and a second story mezzanine. So that's a finishing area. That's where rugs, that's the middle of the ARC's Rugapalooza conference. So things are set up a little different, but that's a intake room and shipping room and finishing. It's a very large space that allows us to work on stuff after it's clean.
And storage too, it looks like.
Yes, of course. Yeah, right.
And now on into your repair area.
Yeah, that's a separate space that we built on the top floor of the building with its own air conditioning and heat and stuff, because guys working downstairs flinging around rugs are wearing t-shirts, whereas people working upstairs want it a lot warmer. You keep your hands warm and stuff like that. So we set up 2 totally different environments in the building for the different job descriptions, and that's a repair area there.
What portion of your total sales are repairs?
Maybe 30%.
Okay.
Like that. It depends how you do the math. We do a lot of work overseas, and if you calculate the gross of our overseas repair work, the figure is much higher. But if you're talking about the work that we actually do in this building, it's maybe 25, 30%.
Okay.
The washing is by far the majority.
Well, it looks like one of your finishing tables, you're giving it a haircut.
Yeah, that's a little hand clipper. We're shearing some fuzz off the rug there.
Maybe not all of the people that are with us tonight are aware of how valuable Native American textiles can be. Can you tell us what's going on in this photograph?
Well, what's going on in the photograph is we're blocking some wearing blankets. You know, the Navajo sort of got conquered by Kit Carson in the 1860s, 70 period. But prior to that time, they wove garments, so-called wearing blankets that they made for themselves or traded to other Native peoples or Anglos or Hispanic people. And subsequently, when they ended up on the reservation, they started making rugs. Well, the blanket period, which is what you see here on the floor, produce textiles that can have very high values, you know, values like 100 and 200 and 300,000 and $1 million or even more, actually. And a lot of you have probably seen those YouTube videos of, you know, Don Ellis on the Antiques Roadshow or, you know, the Pasadena auction where the guy with one leg discovers that he's going to be able to keep his house, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of anecdotal stuff about the high value of some of these textiles. They're an indigenous North American art form, and they're very rare, and the markets valued them very highly.
So there's two blankets there. Kind of give us an idea of when they were produced and what their value might be today.
Those are both classic period wearing blankets, a so-called third phase in the front, a so-called second phase in the back. It's actually two separate textiles that look quite similar. Aggregate value between those two blankets is over $500,000.
And I'm assuming that's why you have a safe in your building, a walk-in safe.
We have a large vault, yes, right. Well, we do a lot of work for museums as well, and so we consequently have to be able to provide them comfort and say, listen, no matter what happens, it's locked up securely.
And here's an example of a repair that you sent me. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that's a transitional Navajo rug. So a Navajo rug from around about 1900, 1890, 1910, something like that. And interestingly enough, it's actually it splits right down the middle there. The top photo, it has a cotton string warp. It was a period of time when the Navajos used cotton string warp. And that rug went through a wringer in a big Midwestern wash plant. And a guy called me up just in a complete state of panic. And he said, I put this thing through the wringer, it got snagged and it got ripped to pieces. And I said, well, send it to me. We'll figure it out. So the top picture is the damage with the beginnings of a repair, and the bottom picture is that area after it has been repaired. And that's, it's a great photo. It's really dramatic, but actually, this is basic level Navajo restoration. I mean, for someone who's done it for a couple of years, this is just the kind of job you do every day.
Okay.
Well, this is a good photo. This is what you can do if you don't know anything. Wash plants, lots of little nicks and dings either occur in wash plants or the rugs come in with small problems. And people think, well, I've got to send it to my guy. People often say, I'm sending it to my weaver, which is usually someone across town someplace who you got to drive it over and he quotes you, whatever. This is a very simple repair to teach someone. A small piece was missing out of a selvage. A little bit of white cotton string got put in there. It got sewn in place and it's wrapped with wool. Anybody who can barely sew, I can teach them to do this in an afternoon. And we do run a class about once a year or so where we do teach some of these real basic kinds of introductory repairs that provide kind of a foundation. A guy could just do simple repairs forever after he took that class, or use it as a springboard where he recombines some of the skills that he acquired to do more elaborate stuff and train himself better.
And that class is going to be June of next year?
That's what we're told, yeah. I mean, everybody's watching the COVID calendar, of course, but we have hopes that in June we'll be able to hold that class.
Okay. Yeah, it's your place in Denver.
Yes, through Master Rug Cleaners. Yes, correct.
People can go to masterrugcleaner.com and read about it. And
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, here's just another really simple repair. Same kind of thing that can be taught to almost anybody who can barely sew. Clients ask all the time, or designers especially ask all the time, can you make lamp cord holes in rugs? Really big rugs where they want the lamp cord holes to come through. And I mean, I have seen everything from just razor knife X's on down to you name it. So we devised a very simple system for making a vertical slip between the warp, sewing some tape around there, stitching it down. You can do a repair like that. Once you're a little bit practiced, you can do a repair like that in 30 minutes. We typically charge $100 per cut. It's a lot of these little repairs are easy to learn and very profitable, kind of thing you can put to the side of the room and have your crew of guys, one of them is trained, And, you know, maybe he's got an extra hour every day and he does these small repairs for you. Doesn't have to be anything too fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is an example of rug restoration. You're looking at a very desirable Caucasian rug here. You can see on the left and right side what are called fold lines or fold cuts. The rug is buckled up, it's worn through, it's been torn open. Much of the design is obliterated. It's a desirable rug, the kind of thing that people spend thousands of dollars to fix. And if you roll up the slide, you'll be able to see what it looks like once it's been fixed. The exposure is a little bit different here, but it's the same rug, and it's been completely put back together again. This kind of thing happens a lot in Iran and Turkey and Pakistan. It tends to be too expensive to do in the United States, but you still have a pretty well-trained workforce in 3 or 4 different countries that can manage repairs like this.
And you're able to send rugs out of the country for this type of work?
We do. There was a very well-known rug company called Woven Legends who produced a very highly regarded line of modern rugs. They were working in Turkey. In 89 or 90, that one of their principals came to me and said, listen, would you write a business model for shipping rugs from America to a facility that we hope to establish in Turkey? And I thought it was a crazy idea, but I went home for the weekend and kind of ran the numbers, and it worked. It worked on paper. And so I called the guy back the next week. I said, yeah, it works on paper. He goes, how'd you like to go do it? So I spent the next 3 years helping establish the Woven Legends repair facility. Their $600,000, my trip to Turkey every 8 weeks or so. It was a lot of work. It was really a lot of work. And then when that was all set up, they asked me to represent them to the United States, and we still do, actually. So we send rugs for private people and for dealer customers to Turkey, have them restored and bring them back.
So anyone who's listening could contact you and send a high-value rug like this off to Turkey?
Or a low-value rug, yeah, sure. I mean, anything. We do a very, you know, everybody thinks you have to send something exotic or fantastic to Turkey. We do a lot of Navajo rugs in Turkey. We send lots and lots of Navajo rugs. Well, the total bill per rug might be as little as $500 to $800. So it's all air freight. It doesn't have to, the big metric is what does the rug weigh? You know, if it's a 100-pound rug and you want to do a $200 repair, it's cheaper to do it in the United States because of shipping costs. But when you invert that, either high value or low weight, low value, then it makes total sense. We send anywhere from 20 to 40 pieces a month to Turkey.
Okay. Other repair in your business, can someone send a rug to you for repair as well? Sure,
absolutely. People send us photos all the time. We just ask they send something high res, and they understand that we're just making our best guess from the pictures. But we're very much a wholesale business. It kind of goes back to the beginning. When I first started doing repair, we were working exclusively for dealers. I didn't have any private customers. And when I started washing rugs, I was working almost exclusively for dealers. So I started out as a wholesale guy who tried to build a retail business, but still have a very big, I mean, I don't know what the percentage of our gross is wholesale, but it's in the 50% range. Let me put you that way. I don't have the exact number, but it's around about there. And that's washing and repair. We do a lot of wholesale work. So we're constantly consulting with dealers or other cleaners or you name it, on the phone, on the internet every day, talking about potential projects. So this is rug stretching. Stretching is very much like replicating the conditions that a rug existed on a loom. You know, if you think of a rug stretched on a large frame, the warp stretched out and the weaving proceeds on that frame. When rugs get out of square or a little wonky, sometimes you can recreate that same tension and pull them back into shape. It's more complicated than that, but just gives you an idea what it looks like.
And that occurs generally in the wash process where it gets out of square, or?
No, not necessarily. Some rugs come off the loom with strange shapes or irregularities. Some primitive village rugs or tribal rugs are sometimes made with multiple different kinds of warps that have differential shrinkage rates. So humidity just causes them to buckle up. You name it, there's any number of reasons. Some rugs are almost perfectly square, but the customers who own them want them to be absolutely perfectly square. So, you know, you meet all different sorts of needs in the blocking and stretching business.
So they want a machine-made look for a hand-knotted rug.
Well, part of it too is a lot of good old stuff gets hung on the wall. Not these big runners like this, but when you hang something on the wall, if it's not really square, it really shows. That's where you begin to see those irregularities of shape, sometimes very subtle ones. And so we do a lot of blocking of things that are going to get hung on the wall, so that they look as perfect as they can.
Okay. I guess concludes our tour through your facility.
Thank you.
You've talked about how important wholesale work is to you. I know Tim had some questions about that.
Yeah, in the greater Denver area, how many professional cleaning companies do you work with that bring you the rugs and you give them?
Let's call it the Front Range. I don't know if you know Colorado geography. Basically, you've got Denver, you got Colorado Springs about 60 miles south of us, Pueblo south of that, Fort Collins about 80 miles north, something like that.
Yeah.
That corridor up and down is really only about 30 miles wide, about 150 miles north-south. So that's our metro area, really. We work with 60 or 70 different carpet cleaners at least in that area, including a lot of the big names, the guys who really spend a lot of money advertising. We offer a price where they can make money. Prevailing rates in Denver, average retail prevailing rates are around about $4 a square foot. Denver's expensive or let us put it this way. Rates tend to be higher here than they are in a lot of Midwestern cities.
Mm-hmm.
So we charge $225 to the wholesale trade. They will typically apply a soil protector or engage in some kind of upsell of some other sort, pad or who knows what. And a lot of them, of course, are in the homes doing installed carpet cleaning. They're doing on-site cleaning. And the great thing about picking up some rugs is they put them in their truck, as long as they can keep them clean in the truck, take them to us, and a week later they're back at the lady's home or the client's home, rolling these rugs out, making the money on that, and also being able to re-engage that customer to make sure that the other job they did on site is satisfactory. And that it's a great way for these fellows to make more money and to really connect with their clients. And it can add a huge profit margin on a job where you had to go be at that house anyway, and all you did was take a rug back a week later, drop it off, and you're making, on a room size rug, you might be making $250 of gross profit. The contractor who brings it to us.
Mm-hmm. What suggestions would you have for them before they take the rug out of the location and bring it to you? Just some photos and.
Well, photos are always great, but of course, if you're in a home, you really have to ask. You have to ask if it's okay to take pictures. A lot of people are very sensitive about photos being taken in their homes. Measuring the rug, providing them a proper receipt, having a real conversation, looking like knowing what you're talking about. I mean, getting some training. This is not for someone who just doesn't want to put a lot of energy into it, go into homes and find rugs and make lots of money. I mean, just because you're not cleaning them yourself doesn't mean you want to be very expert and able to speak. So the most effective contractors who we work with, who have made a lot of money for a long, long time selling cleaning services, are actually pretty knowledgeable about cleaning, and that really helps.
So would they mark, urine damage or?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, an effective way to do it is to print up a slip, like a receipt form where you put the size of the rug down, you get some check boxes on the side. There are many different models for that.
Mm-hmm.
And provide that as a receipt to the customer. Maybe have them sign a disclaimer on the bottom that says you have their rug and these are the terms that you're going to have it under. The more documentation you have, the better. And to learn to do that quickly and simply is more gracious. They don't want you standing around their house for 20 minutes.
Yeah. And then would you recommend like a Bailey insurance or something so they're insured when they take it off premises?
We have all of that. Yes, we carry huge insurance of every conceivable form. And yeah, that's not a bad plan, actually. It's a good plan. I've never questioned my customers to ask them to what degree they insure themselves, but let's hope they do.
We have a couple of questions kind of jumping back to repair. Someone would like to know where you buy your wool for Navajo repairs. And the second question is the turnaround time of sending rugs for repair to Turkey.
I'll try to, I'll answer them in turn. The Navajo, we don't buy any dyed Navajo wool of any kind. We have a lot of it custom spun, and the rest of it we buy from various suppliers. We used to buy a lot from Wild Yarns, Christopher. I don't buy much brown sheep. I mean, if the person who's asking the question is familiar, they'll know what all that means. But we tend to buy bulky rovings and woolen spuns, and we've got a dye facility in our building, so we dye everything to suit, and we dye for inventory or for project. In terms of sending things to Turkey, turnaround on a lot of jobs is 3-4 months, so it's slow. Probably the average size job we do in Turkey is about $2,500. We do a lot of jobs in Turkey on Navajo blankets that cost from $2,500 to $30,000. And when you start getting into the $20,000 and $30,000 range, turnaround times are typically, 6-8 months, something like that. Very, very slow.
Really?
But it's worth it, and oftentimes there's no other alternatives. It's a compromise. You can't get it done any other way, so you do it that way.
It's a very impressive facility.
Oh, yeah, it's called ATC, Antique Textile Conservation. It's in Izmir, Turkey. They have a staff of 60 highly skilled restorers, and it is an impressive facility. The ARCs, a couple of different ARCs groups have made visits there, as have some other groups. And anybody who's going to Turkey, if they're serious about visiting, just write to me and I'll make the arrangements so you can visit.
Okay. How has your company been faring with the virus? I know it's affected everyone, but
well, it's affected everyone. In the state of Colorado, laundries, which was what we are, technically we're a rug laundry, laundries were deemed essential businesses and given an exemption to run. We have a very large building, so we're successful in allowing people to have a lot of space around them. When it first started, we did lay off a couple of people. We had a staff of 20. We're down to about 15 now, through a combination of layoff and attrition. We're hoping it's all over soon. Put you that way.
in terms of your volume, we're kind of coming up on the end of the year. Are you going to be coming out of it whole?
Yeah, we're coming out okay. We were recipients of a fairly large PPP grant. We buy and sell rugs, and that's got nothing to do with washing rugs. And so sometimes we have a very large revenue from buying and selling rugs.
Okay.
But our wash this year is probably 8 or 9% overall down. What's interesting is that our total gross is down by maybe 10, let's say. Let's just for practical purposes, about 10% down total gross. But our wholesale is up by about 15%. It's our retail that went way down. So who knows what that all means? We'll find out next year.
What do you see looking in your crystal ball in terms of trends with rugs? Because there's the famous V word that's out there.
Well, there was a great quote from Kurt Vonnegut years ago, the novelist, where he said, things are going to get worse and worse and worse, and they're not going to get any better. And forgive me for saying that, but in the moment, there are two things that really are putting a lot of pressure on modern rug production. One is the fact that tastes have changed so dramatically, and the desire to spend money, dollars per square foot, has gone down so much. People want less expensive things. And that has coincided with a moment where, after however many thousands of years of weaving rugs, the craft is dying out internationally and will disappear here within the next 20 or 30 years. So you may have woolen gun-tufted rugs 30 years from now, but you'll have very few hand-woven rugs 30 years from now. That's my suspicion, at least. There's a few little backwaters and niches where production is still very possible, although for various reasons it's difficult. Pakistan, I've worked in all the producing countries, so I have an intimate knowledge of how this stuff works. Mm-hmm. Pakistan is still very viable, parts of India, Afghanistan, Iran especially, but each one of them has a proviso. Iran is a possible place to produce because sanctions have kept their economy so debilitated. The minute their economy gets fired up or there's a regime change, a lot of hand production will start to diminish. People work in factories rather than working there. Afghanistan's too politically unstable, and Pakistan, I hate to say this, it's just too complicated. I won't use the word corruption, but there are complications just beyond the beyond. And I've worked a lot in Pakistan, and we were thwarted at every turn, I can say.
Wow. So what about the V word, viscose?
Viscose word? Well, viscose, the funny thing about viscose, and you wrote that wonderful article not that many years ago, there's different kinds of viscose. The Turks in Kayseri in central Anatolia have made what they call, in Turkish, what they call floss, which is like our word floss. And flush was a domestic viscose made from beechwood source cellulose. And they're not bad rugs. They sort of hold up. You can get the stains out. You can clean them. They don't brown out instantaneously. So there's viscose and there's viscose. And I personally don't understand the differences. It's like a lot of that Tencel that's being used in Europe to make those paper thin, machine made viscose shiny things. Those wash up pretty well. The stuff that's coming out of India is very difficult to clean and stains if you just barely look at it with a glass of water. And I would wish that it all went away tomorrow, but I am not naive enough to think that it will.
And the popularity is the look, the shiny silk-like look.
They love it, yes. And I used to wonder. I used to think, why would anybody want a rug like that? And then I went into some modern homes where they had spent a lot of money with good decorators and beautiful homes. And I saw the rug sitting there, and I thought, yeah, they look great. You know, the rooms were nice. I mean, I get that part, but they're not practical.
You do clean them.
We clean many of them every single day, and they keep us in business, just like dogs and kids with crayons. I mean, there are a lot of things that you kind of don't like them, but you live with them. Let's say.
Yeah, when the dog dies, you buy him a puppy. I mean,
something. Yes, right. Well, there's a fantastic amount of dog urine or animal urine, pet urine in area rugs, and that's one of the big dilemmas for carpet cleaners is how to deal with all of that, and it is everywhere, lots and lots of it.
Yeah, I can't remember who said this, but they told me they were no longer a rug cleaner. I said, "Oh, what's happened?" He says, "We're now in the pet waste disposal business."
Oh yes, or in the dirt transfer business. Yes, correct. Yeah. Yep, that is what we do. That's what we do. Actually, we're in the business of talking to people. The rugs don't talk; they just lay there. This is what people don't really frequently they don't understand about a rug washing plant or a rug washing business. As it is, maybe I'm certainly cleaning on location has to be very tough interpersonally. I would think so. For me, I've never done it, but in our business, because the rugs are so expensive and they can be so integral to an important room in the home. Will I get more girlfriends if I buy that rug? That kind of psychology. And so there's a powerful desire for them to feel comfortable and to be spoken to in a way that gives them comfort. And they understand that they're spending their money carefully and wisely. Mm-hmm. And so the rug cleaning, you just learn that like kindergarten. You get to be a good rug cleaner. Then you have to figure out how to deal with the people. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
How have you've kind of spanned several decades now, and you started pretty humbly. What was your marketing plan going in, or how did your marketing plan develop?
I didn't have one. I didn't have one for a very long time. I'm not even sure I have one right now. In the beginning, what happened, it's an anecdotal story. I worked for a Persian guy who, this was 1978. And at the end of 1978, Khomeini, who had been in exile in Paris, went back to Iran, made his grand entry. And the guy I worked for, this guy, Hamid Sharifzadeh, he said, I need to go home to my country because the politics are changing and I want to see what's happening. So he called up all of his customers. He said, I'm leaving. And these two guys who I just sold my wool to are taking over my business. That was my marketing plan. That was it. And we just knew a bunch of different store proprietors around town, and they brought work to us, or we went and got it from them. And when it came time to sort of slowly build a retail business, I did it just very ineptly and through fits and starts, mostly by word of mouth. Tiny bit of paper print advertising. And of course, I was a slave to the Yellow Pages for 20 years before I finally wrote my last check to those guys and was thrilled to do so. I'll remember the Yellow Pages, right? Yeah. So I never had a very sophisticated, better yet, I simply never had a marketing plan. Somewhere in the last 10, 15 years, we began to think more carefully about that. Built websites, hired an SEO company, and tried to figure it out. And it still perplexes me, but we're doing okay. So something's working.
Mm-hmm. How did you get involved with the collectors?
Well, that's very complicated. One of the main ways that I got to know a lot of collectors was my involvement with Woven Legends and the facility in Turkey. I had helped establish that facility in Turkey. The company in America, Woven Legends, that was the main partner with their Turkish partners, took out ads in all the major trades and said, we're doing this crazy new thing. We're going to send rugs to Turkey, and you need to call this guy, Robert Mann, and he's going to give you the bids. And suddenly my phone started ringing from dealers and collectors all over America. So Once again, an anecdotal story. When I first helped set that business up, a number of people I knew in the industry came to me and said, "You're going to put yourself out of business. You'll be broke here real soon because you're setting up this facility in Turkey that's going to compete with you." And I said, "I don't think so." And it turned out in my smugness that I was right there. We got to know dealers and collectors in every state in the country through working for that company. And that was sort of, if there was a marketing plan inadvertently, that was it. I fell into it by accident, let's say. And that was a very effective entree. Also at the time, I was married to a woman, Jeannie Braco, a well-known textile and art conservator who was a funding and grant review person for the NEA in Washington. And so she helped us write grants, or she wrote grants, and we got to do the work for a lot of museum projects. And when private collectors saw that museums were sending you amazing stuff, they figured, well, if the museums are sending it to them, we could do that too. And so that sort of testimonial of doing that sort of work provided this kind of advertising, if you will. Once again, one of these haphazard marketing plans that sort of got thought out barely, but worked. And so a lot of what we did to build our business was just to do the work and be open about it and not keep it all secret, which is what some people in this industry, I don't mean the carpet cleaning industry, but the repair business is oftentimes run by guys who want to make you believe that everything they do is special and secret and that they shouldn't show it to you. And we didn't adopt that mode, that's all.
Like that work that got you into the 1%. I mean, I would call the collectors kind of the 1% of the industry because,
yeah,
like you said, we've seen those antique roadshow videos where they sell for $1-2 million.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Another aspect, and this is collateral, is that even before I began fixing rugs, I had developed, because I was traveling a lot in those countries, I developed an interest in rugs and textiles, just sort of for whatever reason. I just found it interesting and bought and sold even before I began a repairman. Always bought and sold. And so what happens is when you begin to learn the antique material, the collectors will come and talk to you and they'll always test you. So what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And if you can sort of talk that language with them, you then develop a certain credence that you might not have if you didn't know the material, quote unquote. So we do a lot of advising to the collector universe. A guy will call me up, he'll say, look at lot 75 at Ripon Boswell in Wiesbaden 2 days from now and tell me what you think it's going to cost to fix it. Oh, and by the way, what do you think of it? So you enter into a kind of a very personal relationship with a lot of these folks. I like a lot of them. I've known them for years, and they're just as geeky about what they do as I am. And it's perfect.
How important is the Navajo side of your business?
It's a very big part of our business. We probably do. I mean, I'd have to make a wild guess here. We do $300,000 or $400,000 a year worth of restoration on blankets, mostly in Turkey. And we're working on some of the best material that comes in the market. So that's a significant part of our business. And it's rewarding and it's engaging and it forces you to learn. You got to step your game up. You got to understand what the stuff is. And so that's always been a pleasant challenge, not an odious one.
Yeah, someone again has asked about viscose rugs and what is it that allows you to successfully clean viscose, remove the stains, get the pee out, etc.?
A very hot drying room, sun, and tons of peroxide. Those are all the secrets. No, just kidding. Not kidding. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we tumble viscose rugs if the weave will withstand it. So we remove all the dry soil, so they spend less time in the wash. We have ringers and centrifuges that allow us, we use hot water on our floor. We use 105-degree water on our floor with fairly powerful power washers that are regulated. We have a throttle on them. Mm-hmm. So we'll power wash a viscose rug with warm water. That allows us to use a very low concentration of cleaning chemicals, warm water, less detergent. Put it through a wringer, spin it out. 6-7 months out of the year, we have a huge area outside where we can dry things in the sun. So we'll frequently put viscose rugs out in the sun to dry the surface. And then we have a very powerful drying room where when we put them back in that drying room at night, they're dry in 3 or 4 hours. In terms of urine stains, the remedy is straight up peroxide, anywhere from 4% to 30%, depending on what you're doing and how heavily you're applying it.
Well, it kind of sounds like kids don't do this at home kind of thing when you start talking about peroxide at that level. So
Well, peroxide, yeah, well, you know, I mean, 30% peroxide or 27% peroxide, I'm not talking volume, I'm talking percent. It can be applied as a fine mist with a solar sprayer or an airbrush or something like that, so that you're getting an incredibly small dose of really powerful peroxide right at the point where the stain is. And there's technique to that, and anybody who wants to stop by, I'll show them what we do. We have no secrets whatsoever. You know, I mean, we did that Rugapalooza thing a couple of years ago, and we all sat around, sprayed peroxide and stuff together, all of us. So,
and lived to tell about it.
yeah, right. Although I've certainly seen people do a lot of damage with peroxide, so this is no encouragement to go out willy-nilly and do something reckless. I mean, you really got to learn you got to figure out what you're doing before you start running around doing this stuff.
Yeah, we've all seen the damage. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Now, when you say hot water, people that are working with the truck mount, you know, they're thinking 130 degrees hot.
No,
kind of a jacuzzi hot at 104 or 5.
Well, our boiler puts out 160. So I've got a hose. If I need to create a solution at 160, I can fill a bucket with 160. Our power washer guns are at about 105 nozzle temp. And then we have a big feed through wringer, like a Moore machine, a wringer washer machine. The wash jets on that are set at about 145, but once again, that's nozzle temp, and they're hitting a large pool of water that's between a couple of ringers, so temperature drops down to around about 100, 105 pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. But what we've discovered is about at 100 degrees, you're using a half or a third of the detergent you might be using in cold water,
sure.
Which is not so much a savings of money on the detergent as it is putting less into the rug so that you have less to have to take out.
Another question that has come through is fabric protectors on rugs. And you had mentioned a lot of your wholesale clients will sell those directly to the customer. Do you offer that service?
Well, we keep a tiny bit of it around, and if anybody insists we put it on their rug, we spray it on for free. But I will tell you anecdotally, nobody ever asks for it. Now, I run completely counter to the industry logic here, and everyone loves the idea of selling fabric protector because it's such a profitable product. We don't sell it, we don't push it, we don't sell it, and frankly, I don't even believe in it.
Well, listening to some people that do believe in it, and they were speaking to the viscose rugs, they felt because it was such an absorbent cellulosic fiber, it needed a couple of coats, 2 light coats. But
that could be, yeah.
That could answer someone's question, but I can see you're part Armenian. Most of the Armenian rug cleaners say we don't believe in it either.
Yeah, I tend not to believe in it. I mean, you know, a viscose, let me put it to you this way. If I had a white wool couch, I'd be thrilled to put that on there because you can't wash a white wool couch. I can wash a rug. I can take the next 100 viscose rugs that come in with Kool-Aid and pee and whatever on them and have a very high batting average on making them look just as good as they can look. Now, let's face it, a viscose rug frequently, once it's washed 3 or 4 times, is going to look a little different than when you first brought it home from the store. This is a given. I mean, there's surface change, textural change. That's a given, no matter how carefully you clean the rug. This is going to happen even if you just walk on it. Mm-hmm. The idea that I could charge somebody $1 or $2 to spray something on their viscose rug, and then their Great Dane's going to come in and put a quart of pee on that rug, and somehow that secret sauce is going to make that situation better, I don't buy it. That's all. I recognize the potential for profit. I don't denigrate it in any way. I just don't do it. That's all.
Okay.
I'm waiting for the anti-gravity force fields, you know, then we'll be selling them, you know, no problem.
Kool-Aid will bounce out to the gutter, I guess.
Sure, that'd be great.
Do you see rugs out ahead continuing this trend of these machine-made, inexpensive rugs coming down the pike? I
do, as a matter of fact, you know, and you know, the funny thing about machine-made rugs is they can be good. You know, Kerastans were boring. I find them boring visually, but they're very well-made rugs. There are a lot of modern rug producers in Turkey and in Egypt and in places like that who are using pretty good wool, have some interesting designs. Most of them are using Belgian gear, you know, sort of face-to-face cut apart, you know, not Kerastan structures. And, you know, you can make rugs like that you can retail for $18 or $20 a square foot, and they'll look good, and they have a nice full surface, and they're real, you know, and you can spill something on them and you can get it off. I mean, those are quality rugs. I would take one of those any day over a hand-woven Indian viscose rug. So the only thing that holds them back is their ability to design and market and meet, you know, the public demand and desire. That's a very tricky thing. I mean, I worked in rug production for years, watching guys, you know, come out with a new design every year, and either it sold or it didn't sell, you know, and sometimes it was just a mystery whether that worked or not. So it's a very tough thing sometimes.
You know, Robert, sometimes you have people, they go to a discount store and they have a wool rug there, and people buy it for $300 thinking they got a great deal. I'm sure they bring it to you, drop it off. And,
yeah, sometimes they do. They do get a good deal sometimes. But yeah, you know, what you're mentioning there is this sort of contrast between what people pay for things and what it costs to get them clean sometimes. And I have literally had customers, you know, we have a large area of Denver called the North Side or Highlands, just south of our business. And they are mostly older Victorian homes where the main floors are, you know, 1,100 square feet, that kind of thing. So 8x10s and 6x9s fit in there. Young people with money and good jobs live in those homes. They come in with rugs. They say, well, this is a $500 shag rug. I bought it on my phone, and you want to charge me X to wash it? I say, well, you want your house to look nice, don't you? And you don't want to have to sit and talk to your wife or your girlfriend about what you're going to buy if you throw this away. And throwing it away isn't very responsible, is it? And frequently they go, yeah, you're right. I get it. You know, it's not, I mean, we rewash our shirts hundreds of times. I mean, you know, I mean, it's a furnishing textile, and people want their homes to look good, but it does make it harder. It's different when you've inherited some fabulous ancient rug from your grandmother that's worth a pile of money. And when they tell you it's going to cost $400 to clean it, you think, well, that's got to be worthwhile. I do want to maintain this family heirloom. It's true. It's a problem.
Yeah.
Do you clean tufted rugs any differently?
Faster.
Hand tufted.
Yeah. Hand tufted, gun tufted, hand tufted. Yeah. You know, tufted, that's a tricky one, because at one end of the spectrum, you got ones made in India that are just so bad that if you just look at them, they practically fall apart. And at the other end, you have things like Fields or Vasaski, or, you know, you have these super high-end tufted. At the high end, cleaning them is very simple and straightforward, except that they're typically very heavy. At the low end, if they don't have a lot of urine in them, what we do is sometimes we tumble them, but not too much because it breaks them up too much. We use the Moore machine a lot on those. We'll pre-wash the fringes. We use either 0 pH, like Fringe Plus, you know, like a petroleum-based cleaner on there, or very low pH type cleaners, and just try to move them through pretty quick. They have a limited capacity or lifespan if you clean them too. The more you clean them, the more they break down because of the disassociation of the filler and the glue itself. So we clean an awful lot of them, but if I never saw another one, I'd be thrilled. Let me put it to you that way.
There's another question about what do you do with moth-infected rugs?
We have a big walk-in freezer. It's a 10x16 walk-in, just like a restaurant has. And so we'll take, if the weather permitting, we'll take the rug outside with compressed air lines and try to blow as much, you know, sort of moth eggs and moth whatever out of there, get them as air blasted clean as we can. And then we put them immediately in the freezer and leave them there for a couple days. Freezer runs about 15 Fahrenheit, so it's very cold in there, and everything freezes solid. That does not kill the moth eggs. Contrary to popular belief, it doesn't kill the moth eggs. But it kills anything that's moving on that rug. Anything that's even remotely alive is now dead. And you can take it from the freezer to your tumbler, tumble, and then clean out the tumbler enclosure, because you probably knocked some moth eggs on the ground, and then take it and wash it. And at that point, you've done, within reason, everything that's practical and possible in a plant like ours. There used to be fumigators years ago who used methylene bromide and stuff like that, but they're mostly out of business and gone, and it was too complicated anyway. Not much of anything else works.
Okay. Oh, let's see. We've got another question here. For rugs that the client will not allow to be rolled, what is the go-to for cleaning on site? Or is it best to walk away?
Well, I mean, a customer, the idea that a client doesn't want a rug to be rolled is kind of a little odd and quirky, because they probably brought it home rolled. They didn't bring it home a 9x12 bolted to the top of their car with support stakes. So the rug was rolled at some point in its life, so it could be rolled again. A client who insists on having it cleaned in their home can hire someone with an extractor, a truck mount or whatever, and have that person come in and do what I would call, assuming they are careful and skilled, what I would call a creditable surface cleaning. You get the dirt off the top. You cannot properly clean a handmade area rug in someone's home. It's just not possible. And I think if you read all the specs from the various associations who talk about such things, generally speaking, that's the consensus. That doesn't mean that, you can't go home yourself and vacuum your rug very carefully and get a Tampico scrub brush and go over the whole thing with a mild detergent solution and make it look pretty good. But you didn't clean your rug, you just cleaned the top of your rug. So I don't believe that I would aspire to setting up a business where I took machines into people's homes and tried to do surface cleaning. On the other hand, if you're in that home cleaning the wall-to-wall carpeting and someone asks you to run a machine over a rug and make it look better, if you've trained yourself effectively and carefully, you can do that. You just can't clean the fringes or get the urine out. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, we're kind of coming up on our hour of time. Did you have any last questions, Tim?
Yeah, as far as repairs on, a Persian rug, do you ever take like donor rug pieces and, so where a dog chewed up a piece? Do you have those kind of things in your shop, or
patch them? You mean like use pieces of another rug to fill areas? Yeah, occasionally. There are businesses who specialize in that and who have spent, decades accumulating huge quantities of patches, which frankly, unless you keep them in the refrigerator, turn into moth farms. You've got these barrels full of patches and oftentimes they're contaminated. So it's something to be cautious of. Mm-hmm. And specialize in taking pieces of other rugs and sticking them into other rugs. And I've sewn many a patch into a rug, but I generally don't offer that as a specific service, although there are times when it's a great solution. So I have no resistance against it. I just never built my business around the idea that we would do that.
Yeah. And then in your rug course, you kind of go over those kind of repairs, or?
Oh, sure. Yeah. In the class that we offer a 3-day class. It's very intensive. It's entirely hands-on. And we teach people how to sew pieces into rugs. We actually take rugs, cut chunks out of them and sew the chunks back in. Okay. So some of it's about sewing a patch in. Some of it's how to take a rug that's been cut a couple of different ways and piece it itself back together again. They are a similar skill. The thing about patches is, in practical terms, it's really, really hard to find patches that work unless you have that giant inventory that you spent the last 40 years building. And even then, it's not something that I ever aspired to, because we always knew how to reweave holes in rugs. And a reweave is, I won't say it's better than a patch, but it's usually better than a patch, although it is a more expensive approach.
I guess the last question we have for you, with time permitting, is what is the most successful method for removing pet urine from rugs, whether it's natural fiber or synthetic?
Soaking. I buck the trend there. Everybody's soaking rugs in acetic acid and doing all this kind of stuff. We don't do any of that. But bear in mind, we have centrifuges, wringers, hot water, and a big wash wheel, so a 1,200-gallon large machine, a paddle wheel type wash machine, and a small wash machine. In terms of chemicals, we use, shall I name names? Or we use things like U-Turn and some of the Master Blend products that degrade urine and also kill the odor of urine. But generally speaking, most urine rugs we clean, we just use our cleaning process and it gets the urine out. Now, sometimes it takes more than one cleaning, and sometimes we'll soak a rug in warm water for a couple of hours to get the thing fully softened up. Sometimes we'll wash a rug, then tumble it extensively, and then wash it again. Multiple recleans are possible. And with equipment, a reclean is not a big deal. It's much harder if you're doing it all manually. But a lot of the popular ways of getting urine out of rug are designed for people who have less gear than we do. And I'm not saying those are bad ways. They're just ways we don't need to utilize. That's all.
Sure.
But, if you're washing with a plastic basin in a garage and you have no other equipment, then there are techniques that make total sense given those limitations.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Robert, for your time. Obviously, clearly very knowledgeable and skilled at your craft. You set the bar very high for the industry.
Thank you for inviting me. It's very flattering of you to say that too. Thank you.
Well, we've enjoyed our time.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. We're very visible on the web, and I'm pretty free with information. So if any of your listeners tonight or your viewers tonight has a question, you just call me up and I'll talk where you can stand, probably. All right. Thank you.
Great. Thanks again.
The problem rugs too, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, we're happy to talk. Thank you.
Very good.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.